Put simply, the difference between assets and liabilities is very, very simple. Assets are things that put money in your pocket. Liabilities are things that take money out of your pocket. It's obvious that your goal is to acquire as many assets as possible and as little liabilities as possible. In this video, I'm going to teach you the difference between assets and liabilities in more detail. And then, I'm going to tell you how to acquire more assets and acquire less liabilities. The difference. Assets and liabilities are not to be confused. The definition of an asset is very simple. In financial accounting, it is anything that can be utilized to produce value. And obviously, by value, I mean money. Still, many often miss the difference between the two. Here's a classic example. Is a house an asset? Some think that buying a home is an asset. Unless you plan to sell the property, it is a liability, and a pretty big one. It's going to take money away from you for years to come due to the mortgage, not to talk about all the maintenance costs that you're going to sustain on a monthly basis. That's no putting money in your pocket if you ask me. On the other hand, if you plan to resell the property at a higher price, that can be considered an asset. You can also call assets investments if you pay to acquire. Why? Because investments are anything that can bring a measurable return on an initial payment. For example, acquiring stocks or shares and bonds is acquiring assets, because they will generate money for you via dividends, or you can resell them and generate profits through capital gains. We'll explain that later. Is a car an asset? Another interesting one is a car. If you buy a car, the price goes down tremendously the moment you buy it. Used cars are worth extremely less than new cars, so it would be foolish to consider them assets, right? Well, many still discuss this, arguing that since you can later resell the car, you can consider it an asset. In my world, a good asset also needs to generate profit. Something like a car that rapidly depreciates is not to be considered an asset. Whether you sell it 2 hours or 2 years after buying it, you will still not be profitable, because you won't sell it for a higher price. Obviously, there are some exceptions. There are historic cars or collectible cars that can raise in value. We're not talking about those rare cases. We're talking about what most people buy, which is a day-to-day car to drive for personal purposes. Difference between tangible and intangible assets. This one is very easy. Tangible assets are physical. You can touch and interact with them. Some examples are land, property, equipment, cash, inventory, and so on. Intangible assets are assets that you cannot touch. They aren't physical. Some examples are brands, patents, copyrights, and so on. Financial versus real assets. Those are often confused and not separated. People just lump together real and financial and tangible assets like they're the same thing, and bring the same profit. But that's not how it works in reality. Simply put, real assets have an intrinsic value. The intrinsic value is the real value of an asset without any market influence, which is why they're called real assets. Financial assets use the market trading price to define their value, which means you could more easily end up paying for something more than it's actually worth, which isn't good because you'll lose money, which is also why people like Warren Buffett talk a lot about finding out the intrinsic value of a company, so that you know if a stock costs more than its real value. If the market price is lower than the intrinsic value, you will very likely find a profit in the future when the market price will come close to or exceed intrinsic value. Financial assets, on the other hand, derive their value from contractual claims. Two examples are stocks and bonds, which I will explain shortly, and they're considered tangible assets. Amongst them, financial assets are easier to convert into cash. Assets like real estate and commodities are harder to cash in on. The mother of all assets. Stocks. If you don't know how they work, I'm going to make it so simple that you're 100% going to understand them by the end of this video. Stocks are the most well-known assets, and they have huge potential for those that know how to invest in them. What are they? Stocks, also called shares, are a fraction of a company. When you buy a stock, you basically buy a very small percentage of that company. Imagine having a house, and you can come and buy one brick. You're entitled to that brick, and you're part of the household because you own that brick. Now, why in the world would you want to own a brick? Give me a minute, and I'll get there. First, I need you to understand that when you buy a stock, you're basically becoming an associate to that company. If you own enough shares, which means you own a bigger slice of the company, you could also have voting rights when the company makes important decisions. 2 ways to make money with stocks. There are 2 ways mainly to make a profit with stocks. The first, which is the most common, is capital gain. This means that you buy a stock, and you wait for its price to go up, and then you sell it. For example, you might buy a stock for $5, and then sell it for $7. You would make a profit of $2, and you're good to go. Do prices only go up? No, they fluctuate. That's what all the graphs represent. Prices can go up and down, depending on demand and supply of the market. The more demand a stock has, the more it will cost. So if you think that a stock will grow in demand in the future, you should buy it, because it's going to rise in value, which means you will be able to sell it for a higher price. However, you should be careful. If your predictions are wrong and the price doesn't go up but down, you will lose money. Many consider this a gamble, but if you know what you're doing and you evaluate the companies that you buy, you should make money most of the time. The second way to make money with stocks is with dividends, which are issued yearly, quarterly, or semi-annually, twice a year. Dividends are the equivalent of your ownership in that company. Back to the brick example. If you buy 1 brick out of 100, you will get 1% of the profits of that house. Make sense so far? How do you acquire stocks? The easiest way to do this is to open an investing account through an online stockbroker. Your bank also probably offers these services, so you might be able to invest old school with your bank directly. Fees apply in both cases, so every transaction is regulated and taxed. You could also buy directly from the company, but that is much harder. It takes time and a lot of capital. Real estate. Property is another asset, in certain cases. I say in certain cases because, as I said earlier, owning a home to live in for the rest of your life without the intent of selling it is not an asset. It's an expense. But then there are real estate investors who invest in underpriced property to resell or rent it. Then it becomes an asset. This one is very simple in theory, but it's a whole other story when it comes to practice. Here's how it works. As a real estate guy, you start your day with looking for interesting deals. You look for underpriced properties. What does underpriced mean? It means that you're looking for something that has a lot of potential, but that has been mismanaged for a while. So it might have some issues to fix, which is why the price is low. You're going to fix those issues and resell the property at a higher price. By fixing issues, I mean doing anything that will bring up the price of the property, like remodernizing it, repainting it, or adding furniture. There are a lot of factors that influence the price of a property. It's not just about how it's been managed. Things like timing, location, neighborhood, economic indicators, and interest rates are just a few examples. Or, instead of reselling the property, you could rent it after fixing it. This will ensure some extra cash coming in every month. There are multiple types of property: residential, industrial, raw land, commercial, special use. But realistically, you probably don't have the money or the confidence and knowledge to buy and rent or sell property. You probably don't even know where to look. Does that mean you can't start acquiring these types of assets? Well, first of all, you can always learn how to do it. Another option is you could purchase REITs, Real Estate Investment Trusts. With REITs, you wouldn't need all the knowledge. You would just trust a company to invest your money in real estate, and they would give you a dividend in exchange for your investment. Many claim that those are great assets, since they provide high dividend yields and long-term appreciation, aka the prices go up and you resist inflation. Is knowledge an asset? Knowledge is in fact an intangible asset. The reason it's considered an asset is pretty simple. Let's pretend that you own a marketing company. What you do is pretty simple. You help businesses find more clients through internet marketing. You figure out everything from marketing strategies to approach and copy. You, as the founder of this successful business, can't do everything by yourself, so you need to delegate. First, you hire an accountant and a financial advisor to take care of that side of business. Then you start hiring content creators. You need them in order to create the content that's going to be marketed. Then you need to hire good salespeople to find even more clients for your company. They're supposed to take on leads and convert them into buyers. Now, the better the salespeople you hire, the more clients you'll close, the more money you'll make. See where I'm going with this? If you invest into hiring talented people that know how to sell, their knowledge is an asset. It simply becomes something you're going to leverage to make more money. Also, the return on your investment is absolutely measurable, since you can easily calculate how much you spend on a monthly basis, or commission, per sales guy, and the value of their knowledge is defined by how much money they bring in. How does this apply to you? It's unlikely that you have a company that needs to hire people, so here's the thing. You can become the asset. If you learn a valuable skill that you know entrepreneurs need to grow their business, learning is key, and the better your knowledge becomes, the more you'll be paid for.